The morning sun painted the fields of New Busan Colony in golden light as Lee Tae-ho walked between the rows of vegetables he had planted with his own hands. The soil was rich here on this distant world, far from the busy trade routes and the noise of civilization. He liked it that way. 8 years ago, when he first arrived with his baby daughter, the silence had felt strange after decades of war. Now it felt like home. He picked tomatoes and placed them carefully in his basket. Each movement was precise and efficient, though he no longer thought about why he moved this way. Old habits never truly died. They just went to sleep. The other colonists knew him as a quiet man who grew the best vegetables in 3 sectors and never talked about his past. They respected his privacy because everyone who came to the Outer Rim colonies had something they wanted to forget. Papa, Sora's voice carried across the field from their small house. At 16, she was tall and strong from years of helping with the farm work. Her smile could light up the darkest day, and her laugh reminded Tae-ho why he had given up everything to come to this peaceful place. "Breakfast is ready!" He waved back and started walking toward the house. Sora stood on the porch, her long black hair tied back with a ribbon made from old fabric. She wore simple work clothes like everyone else on New Busan, but Tae-ho could see the intelligence in her dark eyes. She was too smart for this small world, and they both knew it. "The acceptance letter came today," she said quietly as he climbed the steps. Her voice carried hope and fear in equal measure. Tae-ho set down his basket and looked at the official envelope in her hands. The seal showed the logo of the Interstellar Academy on Mars, the most prestigious school in human space. Sora had been dreaming of studying xenobiology there since she was 12 years old. She wanted to understand the alien species that humans shared the galaxy with, to build bridges between different worlds. "Well?" he asked, though he could already see the answer in her glowing face. "I got in." She threw her arms around him, and for a moment she was his little girl again instead of the young woman she was becoming. "Full scholarship, Papa. They want me to start next semester." Tae-ho held her tight and felt his heart break a little. He was proud of her, prouder than words could express. But Mars was so far away, and the galaxy was a dangerous place for a young human woman traveling alone. There were pirates and slavers in the deep space between worlds. There were alien species who saw humans as nothing more than curiosities or prey. "That's wonderful, Sora," he said, and meant it. "You've worked so hard for this." They ate breakfast together as they did every morning, but today felt different. Change was coming whether they wanted it or not. Sora chattered excitedly about her plans, about the classes she would take and the research she wanted to do. Tae-ho listened and smiled, and tried not to think about how quiet the house would be without her laughter filling it. After breakfast, they worked together in the fields as they had for years. The harvest season was almost over, and soon the long winter would come to New Busan. The colonists would gather in the community center to tell stories and play games while the snow fell outside. It was a good life, a simple life. Tae-ho had found peace here that he never thought possible. But peace was a fragile thing in the galaxy, and it rarely lasted long. The attack came just after sunset, when most of the colonists were having dinner with their families. Tae-ho heard the roar of engines overhead and knew immediately that something was wrong. The supply ships were not due for another month, and no trader would arrive without sending a message first. "Papa?" Sora looked up from her book, hearing the same sound. "Get to the bunker," Tae-ho said quietly. His voice carried a tone she had never heard before, cold and sharp as a blade. Now, the underground shelter had been built when the colony was founded, designed to protect against storms and wild animal attacks. Tae-ho had made improvements over the years, adding stronger locks and better air filters. He had told himself it was just being careful, but deep down he had always known this day might come. The first explosions shook the ground as alien ships descended from the dark sky. Through the window, Tae-ho could see creatures he recognized from old intelligence files. Vorthak raiders, hulking reptilian humanoids with scaled skin and claws like knives. They were slavers who attacked isolated colonies to capture humans, for sale to alien empires that prized human adaptability and intelligence. "The communicator is in the bunker," Tae-ho told Sora as he sealed the heavy door above them. If I don't come back in 6 hours, send a distress signal on emergency frequency 7. Tell them the Vorthok hit New Busan. Papa? What's happening? Who are those things? For a moment, Tae-ho almost told her everything. About the wars he had fought. About the things he had done in the name of protecting humanity. About why people used to whisper his name in fear across a dozen star systems. But she was looking at him with such trust, such faith that her father could keep her safe from anything. Just stay here, he said instead. Don't come out no matter what you hear. The bunker was hidden beneath their vegetable garden, camouflaged, so well that even orbital scans would miss it. Sora would be safe there while he dealt with the raiders. He had weapons cached around the farm, military-grade equipment that he had hoped never to use again. The farmer Lee Tae-ho would have hidden with his daughter and prayed the raiders would not find them. But the man he used to be, the one they called the Ghost of Proxima, would never cower while innocent people were being slaughtered above. The sounds of battle raged through the night. Tae-ho moved through the darkness like a shadow, picking off Vorthak warriors with silent efficiency. The colonists fought bravely with hunting rifles and farming tools, but they were no match for trained raiders with military weapons. By dawn, the shooting had stopped. Tae-ho emerged from his hiding place among the grain silos to find New Busan burning. Bodies lay scattered in the streets, human and alien alike. The Vorthak had taken heavy casualties, but they had achieved their goal. Most of the colonists were dead, and the survivors had been herded into cargo ships for transport to slave markets. His hands shaking, Tae-ho ran to the bunker and opened the sealed door. The chamber was empty. Sora's emergency beacon lay broken on the floor, and scratches on the metal walls showed signs of a struggle. They had found her somehow. Security footage from his hidden cameras showed the truth. A Vorthak strike team had used deep-ground sensors to locate the bunker while Tae-ho was fighting across the colony. Sora had tried to defend herself with the pistol he had taught her to use, but she was one teenage girl against 5 trained warriors. The last image showed them dragging her unconscious form toward their ship. Her tracking implant, the one all colonists carried for medical emergencies, had been surgically removed and left behind in the bunker. They knew how to cover their tracks. Lee Tae-ho, peaceful farmer and loving father, died in that moment. What emerged from the smoking ruins of New Busan was something much older and infinitely more dangerous. The Ghost of Proxima had returned, and he would not rest until his daughter was safe in his arms again. The galaxy had forgotten what happened when someone threatened the family of humanity's most lethal warrior. They were about to be reminded. The communication array on New Busan had been destroyed in the attack, but Tae-ho found an old emergency transmitter in the ruins of the colony's administrative building. His fingers moved across the controls with muscle memory that 8 years of farming had not erased. The encryption codes came back to him as if he had used them yesterday instead of nearly a decade ago. Admiral Park Hyun-woo answered the secure channel himself, which told Tae-ho everything he needed to know about how seriously the military took any message from his old identification codes. Park's face appeared on the small screen, older now with more gray in his hair, but his eyes were still sharp as laser sights. "I thought you were dead," Park said without preamble, "or at least smart enough to stay that way." "The Vorthak hit my colony," Tae-ho replied. "They took my daughter." Park's expression shifted from surprise to something approaching sympathy. He had known Tae-ho for 20 years, had seen him through the worst battles of the frontier wars. The Admiral understood what it meant when the Ghost of Proxima asked for help. "Official channels will take weeks," Park said quietly. "The Vorthak operate in sectors where we have no jurisdiction. By the time any rescue mission got approval, your daughter would be long gone into deep space." "Then give me unofficial channels." Park was quiet for a long moment, weighing the consequences. Helping a retired operative pursue personal vengeance could end his career, but leaving Tae-ho's daughter in the hands of alien slavers was unthinkable. Finally, he transmitted a data packet to Tae-ho's communicator. "Titan Station," Park said. "Ask for a smuggler named Choi Min-ho. He deals with information as much as contraband. Tell him I sent you, and he might not shoot you on sight." The journey to Titan Station took 3 days in Tae-ho's small farming transport, a ship designed for hauling vegetables between colonies rather than chasing slavers across the galaxy. He spent the time reviewing everything he could find about Vorthak raiding patterns and slave trade routes. The data painted a grim picture of organized crime on a galactic scale. Titan Station orbited Saturn's largest moon, a sprawling collection of docking bays and habitation modules that served as a hub for legitimate trade and illegal activity in equal measure. The station authorities asked no questions as long as docking fees were paid and violence was kept to a minimum. It was exactly the kind of place where a man could buy information about missing daughters and the weapons needed to get them back. Tai-Ho found Choi Min-ho in a cantina that smelled of alien alcohol and human desperation. The weapons dealer was a thin man with careful eyes who dressed like a respectable businessman but wore body armor beneath his expensive suit. When Tai-Ho mentioned Admiral Park's name, Min-ho's expression shifted from polite disinterest to genuine fear. Park Hyun-woo doesn't call in favors lightly, Min-ho said, gesturing for Tai-Ho to sit across from him in a darkened booth. What do you need? Information about Vorthak's slave routes, recent activity in the Outer Rim sectors. Min-ho poured himself a drink from an unmarked bottle and studied Tai-Ho's face. You're him, aren't you? The one they used to call the Ghost. I thought you were a myth the military made up to scare pirates. Do I look like a myth? No, Min-ho said quietly. You look like a very dangerous man who's lost something important. He reached into his jacket and produced a data pad, his movements slow and careful to avoid triggering any defensive reflexes. The Vorthak have been hitting human colonies hard over the past 6 months, always targeting settlements with young populations. They're filling a large order for someone with deep pockets. The data showed raid patterns across a dozen systems, each attack precisely planned and brutally executed. The Vorthak were not random pirates looking for easy prey. They were operating as part of a larger organization with specific goals and unlimited resources. Who's buying? Tai-Ho asked. The Hegemony, Min-ho replied. An alien empire that spans half the Andromeda sector. They prize human slaves for their adaptability and intelligence. Young humans especially. They pay premium. Prices for specimens between the ages of 15 and 25. Tai-Ho's hands clenched into fists beneath the table. Sora fit that profile perfectly, brilliant, young, and completely innocent of the horrors that awaited her in alien slave markets. I need weapons, he said. Military grade, and a ship fast, enough to catch Vorthak raiders. Min-ho named a price that would have bankrupted most people, but Tai-Ho had military savings that had been accumulating interest for 8 years. He transferred the credits without hesitation. Some things were worth more than money. The weapons locker Min-ho showed him contained enough firepower to level a small city. Plasma rifles, gravitic grenades, personal shield generators, and close combat. Weapons designed specifically for fighting alien physiology. Tai-Ho selected his equipment with the careful attention of a craftsman choosing tools, each item chosen for maximum efficiency rather than raw destructive power. The ship was a modified courier vessel called the Swift Current, built for speed and stealth rather than comfort. Its previous owner had been a smuggler who ran contraband past alien patrols, which meant it had military-grade sensors and a drive system that could outrun most pursuit craft. As Tai-Ho prepared to leave Titan Station, a young woman approached, him at the docking bay. She was tall and lean with short black hair and scars on her hands that spoke of hard living. Her name was Kimbo Ram, and she claimed to be a bounty hunter with information about his daughter's location. The Vorthak convoy that hit your colony made a stop at Kepler Station, she said without introduction. They were bragging about capturing a prize specimen, a young human female with xenobiology training. That has to be your daughter. What do you want in return? Tai-Ho asked. In his experience, no one offered valuable information without expecting something in return. Partnership, Bo-Ram replied. The Vorthak took my younger brother Jae-min from a mining colony 8 months ago. I've been tracking them ever since, but they're too well organized for one person to handle alone. You have the skills and resources I need. I have intelligence networks and contacts you don't. Tai-Ho studied her face, looking for signs of deception or hidden agenda. Bo-Ram met his gaze steadily, her dark eyes holding the same desperate determination he felt burning in his own chest. She was young, probably not much older than Sora, but she carried herself like someone who had learned hard lessons about survival in an unforgiving galaxy. My brother was 16 when they took him, she continued. Smart kid, wanted to be an engineer. The Vorthak specialize in breaking strong-willed humans, turning them into compliant slaves. Every day we wait is another day of torture for our family members. The smart thing would be to work alone. Taeho had always been a solitary operative, relying on stealth and precision rather than teamwork. But Boram was right about one thing. The Vorthak organization was too large and well-connected for a single person to dismantle, and she clearly knew the criminal underworld better than he did after 8 years of peaceful farming. 50-50. Split on any information we find, he said finally. But I lead tactical operations. This isn't a democracy. Understood, Boram replied. I've heard stories about the Ghost of Proxima. I know what you're capable of. As their ships departed Titan Station together, Taeho wondered if he was making a mistake by trusting a stranger. But the alternative was hunting for Sora alone, in a galaxy full of hostile aliens and criminal organizations. At least this way, he had someone watching his back who understood what it meant to lose family to the darkness between stars. The communications array on Boram's ship crackled with intercepted Vorthak transmissions as they jumped to hyperspace. Somewhere in the vast emptiness ahead, his daughter was being held captive by creatures who saw her as nothing more than valuable cargo. But they had made one crucial mistake. They had taken the daughter of humanity's most lethal warrior, Sax. Ghost of Proxima was coming for them, and he would not stop until every slaver in the galaxy knew the price of threatening human families. The journey to the Shattered Worlds took 6 days through hyperspace, following coordinates that Boram had purchased from a Vorthak deserter on a backwater trading post. The region earned its name from the asteroid field that filled 3 entire star systems, remnants of planets destroyed in an ancient war between alien species that humans had never heard of. Among the floating rocks and debris, pirates and criminals had built hidden bases far from any government's reach. Taeho spent the travel time studying tactical data and cleaning his weapons with the methodical precision that had kept him alive through 2 decades of warfare. Boram proved surprisingly knowledgeable about Vorthak military structure and slaver operations, information she had gathered during months of hunting for her missing brother. The Vorthak use asteroid bases as supply depots, she explained as they reviewed surveillance photos on the ship's main screen. They can't carry enough food and fuel for long-range raiding missions, so they cache supplies in hidden locations throughout the outer systems. The depot on asteroid Kappa 7 was one of the largest, built inside a hollowed-out rock that provided natural protection from detection and attack. Intelligence reports showed it could supply dozens of Vorthak ships with everything from weapons to slave restraints. More importantly, the facility's computers would contain shipping records showing where captured humans had been transported. How many guards? Taeho asked. 40 to 50 Vorthak warriors, Boram replied, plus automated defense systems and a handful of alien mercenaries from other species. The facility commander is a Vorthak named Grak Tul, who has a reputation for extreme brutality even by his species' standards. The asteroid's surface looked lifeless and barren as their ships approached, just another piece of space debris drifting in the endless void. But deep-range scans revealed the hidden entrance tunnels and the complex network of chambers carved into the rock's interior. Getting inside would require stealth and precise timing. I go in alone, Taeho said as they prepared their equipment. You monitor communications and watch for patrols that might escape. Boram shook her head firmly. We're partners, remember? Besides, you'll need someone covering your back once the shooting starts. Taeho wanted to argue, but he recognized the stubborn determination in her voice. It was the same tone Sora used when she had made up her mind about something. These 2 young women were separated by light years and circumstances, but they shared the same iron will that made humans so dangerous when pushed to their limits. The main entrance to the depot was guarded by sensor arrays and automated plasma cannons, but Taeho had studied the facility's construction plans during the flight. Like most asteroid bases, Kappa 7 had emergency airlocks for maintenance crews working on the outer hull. These secondary entrances were smaller and less heavily defended, designed to be used during crisis situations when the main entrance might be blocked. They approached in EVA suits, using small maneuvering thrusters to drift between the floating rocks like pieces of debris. The emergency airlock was exactly where the stolen blueprints indicated, hidden beneath a camouflaged panel on the asteroid's dark side. Boram proved surprisingly skilled at electronic intrusion, bypassing the lock's security systems with equipment. That looked suspiciously military in origin. The interior corridors were lit by dim red lights that provided enough illumination for Vorthak eyes while conserving power. The air smelled of alien sweat and chemical preservatives, with an underlying stench of fear and suffering that made Taeho's stomach clench. This place had seen too much cruelty over the years. They moved through the depot like ghosts, avoiding patrols and security cameras with skills honed by years of dangerous work. Boram's knowledge of the facility's layout proved accurate, leading them through maintenance tunnels toward the central computer core where shipping records would be stored. The first Vorthak guard died without making a sound. Taeho's combat, knife sliding between scales to find the major artery beneath. The second guard had time to open his mouth before Boram's plasma pistol burned a hole through his skull. They dragged the bodies into an empty storage room and continued deeper into the asteroid. The computer core was protected by 3 layers of security. But Boram's equipment made short work of the electronic locks. As she worked, Taeho kept watch for patrols while trying not to think about what Sora might be experiencing wherever the Vorthak had taken her. The intelligence files were clear about how alien slavers treated their human captives during transport and processing. "Got it," Boram whispered as data began flowing across her portable screen. "Shipping manifest for the past 6 months, including—" "Wait!" Her voice changed as she found the information they were looking for. "Here. Raid on New Busan Colony. Primary cargo transferred to processing facility designated as Market Station." The market was a mobile fortress that moved between star systems, too large and well-defended for normal law enforcement to challenge. It served as a central hub where slaves from dozens of species were sorted, processed, and sold to buyers throughout alien space. According to the data Boram was downloading, the facility currently held over 3,000 captives from 40 different worlds. "There's more," she said, her face pale in the computer screen's glow. "Your daughter was classified as a premium specimen. High intelligence, xenobiology education, optimal age range. She's been selected for something called advanced conditioning." Taeho felt ice form in his veins. Advanced conditioning was a psychological process that broke a slave's will to resist while preserving their intelligence and skills. It was considered more valuable than simple physical control because it created compliant servants who could think and act independently within carefully programmed limitations. "How long does the process take?" he asked. "According to this, 3 to 4 weeks, depending on the subject's psychological resilience." Boram checked the timestamps on the shipping records. "Your daughter has been missing for 8 days. We still have time." The sound of marching footsteps in the corridor outside made them both freeze. A Vorthak patrol was approaching the computer core, probably on a routine security check. Taeho signaled for Boram to continue the download while he moved to intercept the guards before they could discover the intrusion. The corridor was narrow and dimly lit, perfect for close-quarters combat against enemies who relied on superior numbers rather than individual skill. The first Vorthak warrior rounded the corner and walked directly into Taeho's plasma rifle, the energy bolt punching through his chest armor before he could raise an alarm. The second guard managed to fire once before a gravitic grenade turned his weapon and most of his torso into expanding plasma. But the sound of weapons fire echoed through the asteroid's tunnels, and within seconds alarm klaxons were wailing throughout the facility. Emergency lights bathed the corridors in harsh white illumination as blast doors began sealing automatically to contain potential breaches. "Downloads complete," Boram reported as she sealed the computer terminal and shouldered her equipment. "Pack. But we've got company coming from 3 directions." What followed was a running battle through the depot's maze-like interior as Vorthak security forces converged on their position. Taeho moved through the alien warriors like death itself, his weapons and tactics honed by decades of fighting. Humanity's enemies. These creatures were brutal and physically powerful, but they had never faced a human super-soldier fighting to save his daughter. Boram proved herself an able partner, covering their retreat with precise fire while Taeho cleared obstacles from their path. Her movements showed training that went beyond what most bounty hunters possessed, making him wonder about her real background. But there would be time for questions later if they survived the next few minutes. The emergency airlock was sealed. When they reached it, but shaped charges from Taeho's equipment kit blasted it open in a shower of twisted metal and escaping atmosphere. They launched themselves into space as Vorthak warriors poured into the damaged chamber behind them, plasma bolts lighting up the void as they fled toward their hidden ships. "Market Station's current location," Boram transmitted as they accelerated, away from the asteroid. "It's in the Kepler Nebula, using the gas clouds to hide from long-range sensors. But there's something else you need to know." Tejo listened as she explained what the computer files had revealed about Market Station's operations. The facility was not just a slave market, but a research center where alien scientists studied different species to find new ways of controlling them. Humans were of particular interest because of their psychological resilience and adaptability. Sora was not just being prepared for sale. She was being used as a test subject for new conditioning techniques that would be applied to future human captives. Every day she spent in that nightmare facility made her suffering worse while providing the aliens with better methods for breaking the human spirit. The Vorthak depot behind them erupted in secondary explosions as their sabotage charges detonated throughout the facility. 40 years of stored supplies and intelligence went up in flames, dealing a significant blow to slaver operations in the sector. But Tejo felt no satisfaction in the destruction. Every moment they had spent fighting was another moment that Sora remained in alien hands. Market Station hung in the Kepler Nebula like a metallic spider web against the glowing gases, its massive bulk stretching for kilometers in every direction. The facility was larger than most cities, a nightmare construction of holding cells, processing centers, and auction halls where sentient beings were reduced to mere commodities. Hundreds of ships came and went from its docking bays, bringing fresh captives and carrying away purchased slaves to distant worlds. Tejo and Boram studied the station from the concealment of a sensor dead zone deep in the nebula's ionized gases. Their ship's passive scanners painted a detailed picture of the facility's defenses: energy shields that could deflect battleship weapons, fighter squadrons patrolling the surrounding space, and enough firepower to level a moon. A direct assault would be suicide for anything short of a full military fleet. "The slave auction starts in 6 hours, Boram reported as she monitored the station's communication traffic. "Premium specimens are being showcased for high-value buyers from across the galaxy." Tejo's hands tightened on his weapon grips. Sora would be among those premium specimens, displayed like livestock for alien creatures who saw humans as property rather than people. The thought made rage burn in his chest, but he forced himself to remain calm. Anger was a tool to be controlled, not a master to be served. "We go in as buyers," he decided. "I still have the identity documents from my intelligence days, fake credentials showing us as representatives of a minor trade consortium looking to purchase human servants. The false identities would hold up under casual inspection, but not deep investigation. They would have maybe 12 hours inside the station before security realized they were not who they claimed to be. It would have to be enough time to find Sora and get her out." They docked at one of the station's commercial bays, their ships, hidden among dozens of other vessels from across the galaxy. The docking fees alone cost more than most people earned in a year, but Market Station catered to buyers with unlimited resources and appetites for exotic merchandise. The interior of the facility was a monument to organized suffering. Corridors stretched for kilometers past holding cells containing thousands of captives from dozens of different worlds. Humans shared space with reptilian Corvani, insectoid Zephyrite, and species that Tejo did not recognize. All of them had the same look of broken despair that came from being reduced to property. "Stick to the cover story," Boram whispered as they walked past a group of alien guards. "We're here looking for household servants with technical training." The main auction hall was a vast amphitheater where buyers gathered to bid on slaves, arranged by species and specialty. Tejo watched alien creatures casually discussing the merits of different captives while guards moved humanoid figures onto display platforms. The casual cruelty was overwhelming, but he forced himself to maintain the disguise of a disinterested purchaser. "Lot 17, the auctioneer announced in translated Universal Standard. "Human female, age 16, xenobiology education, psychological resistance rating 7 of 10. Bidding starts at 50,000 credits." Tejo's breath caught as Sora was led onto the stage. She was thinner than when he had last seen her, her clothes replaced by a gray slave tunic that marked her as property. but her eyes still held defiance even after days of captivity and conditioning attempts. She scanned the crowd of alien buyers, with undisguised hatred, searching for any sign of weakness or opportunity. The bidding was fierce, with representatives from several alien empires driving the price higher and higher. Tejo wanted to rush the stage and slaughter every creature that dared look at his daughter as merchandise. But Boram's hand on his arm reminded him that revealing themselves now would doom any chance of rescue. 120,000. Credits? Called a voice from the premium buyer section. The speaker was a massive alien with blue-scaled skin and eyes like black diamonds, for immediate transport to the Hegemony Conditioning Center. Warlord Crackstar, according to the whispered identification from nearby buyers. He was the Hegemony's chief procurement officer for human slaves, responsible for acquiring thousands of captives for their research programs. Sora would disappear into alien space if he won the auction, lost forever in facilities that no human authority could reach. 150,000, Tejo called out, using the fake identity codes that identified him as a legitimate buyer. The amount represented nearly his entire savings, but money meant nothing compared to his daughter's life. Crackstar's massive head turned to study this unexpected competition. His black eyes seemed to look directly through Tejo's disguise, but the alien said nothing as the auctioneer called for additional bids. The price climbed higher as other buyers joined the competition, drawn by the unusual interest in this particular specimen. 200,000 credits, Crackstar declared finally. Final offer. The auction hall fell silent as other bidders withdrew from competition. 200,000 credits was more than most governments paid for military equipment, an astronomical sum for a single slave. But Tejo had already pushed his financial resources beyond their limits, and any higher bid would expose him as a fraud when his account proved insufficient. Sold to Warlord Crackstar for 200,000 credits, the auctioneer announced. Delivery to Hegemony transport vessel in 1 hour. Tejo watched helplessly as guards led Sora away from the auction platform. She looked back once at the crowd of buyers, her eyes meeting his for a brief moment across the vast hall. There was no recognition in her gaze, but something flickered there that might have been hope. She was still fighting, still believing, that somehow rescue would come. "We need to find the processing center," Boram whispered as they left the auction hall. "That's where they'll be holding your daughter until transport." The conditioning center was located in the station's most secure section, surrounded by multiple layers of security barriers and guard posts. According to the facility map they had stolen from a maintenance terminal, it contained hundreds of individual cells where slaves underwent psychological modification before final sale. "My brother would be there too," Boram added quietly. "If he's still alive." They made their way through the station's commercial district, past shops selling restraints and control devices to slave owners from across the galaxy. The casual acceptance of sentient suffering was nauseating, but Tejo forced himself to maintain the disguise of someone who belonged in this nightmare place. The conditioning center's entrance was guarded by a mixed force of Vorthak warriors and Hegemony soldiers, all heavily armed and alert for trouble. Getting past them would require a distraction large enough to draw their attention away from the secured entrances. "The power distribution center," Boram suggested as they studied. "The security layout. If we could cause a blackout in this section, it would force them to open the emergency exits." Tejo considered the plan. It was risky and would certainly expose their presence to station security, but stealth was no longer an option anyway. Once they entered the conditioning center, there would be no hiding their true purpose. "Do it," he decided. "I'll go in during the confusion and find Sora." "We'll both go in," Boram corrected. "My brother is in there too, remember?" The power center was located 3 levels down from the conditioning facility, protected by automated defenses and a handful of technician guards. Boram proved surprisingly skilled with demolitions, placing shape charges at critical points in the distribution network, while Tejo eliminated the guards with silent efficiency. "Charges set," she reported. "Detonation in 60 seconds. They reached the conditioning center just as the explosions plunged an entire section of Market Station into darkness. Emergency lighting cast everything in hellish red shadows as blast doors slammed shut automatically. Guards rushed toward the power failure, leaving only a skeleton crew to watch the secured facilities. Tejo moved through the darkened corridors like his old call sign suggested, a ghost that killed without warning and vanished before his enemies could respond. The conditioning center was a maze of individual cells and treatment rooms where alien scientists worked to break the minds of their captives. He found Sora in a cell near the center of the facility, strapped to a chair that delivered electrical stimulation designed to condition behavioral responses. She was unconscious but breathing, her body showing signs of the psychological torture that passed for treatment in this place. "Papa," she whispered as he cut her restraints. Her voice was weak, but her eyes showed recognition and relief. "I knew you would come." "Can you walk?" he asked, while checking her for serious injuries. "I think so." She struggled to her feet with his help, leaning against him for support. "They've been trying to make me forget things, but I kept remembering your stories about never giving up." Boram appeared in the doorway, supporting a young man who looked barely conscious. "I found Jae-min," she said, but her voice carried no joy. "He's been fully conditioned. He doesn't remember me at all." The young man stared at them with empty eyes, his mind wiped clean of everything that had made him human. He moved with mechanical obedience, responding to simple commands but showing no recognition of his sister's face. "The conditioning can be reversed." The corridor erupted in plasma fire as hegemony guards rounded the corner ahead of them, their weapons painting deadly light through the emergency lighting. Tejo pushed Sora and Boram into a side passage while returning fire with calculated precision. Each shot found its target, alien warriors dropping with smoking holes burned through their armor. "This way," Sora whispered, pointing toward a maintenance hatch she had observed during her captivity. "The ventilation shafts connect to the docking bays." They crawled through the narrow passages while battle raged in the corridors below. The station's security forces were mobilizing in response to the power failures and guard casualties, but they had no experience fighting human guerrilla tactics. Tejo used their own infrastructure against them, turning maintenance tunnels into kill zones and environmental systems into weapons. "Bay 17 is directly below us," Boram reported as she consulted the stolen station schematics. "But there are at least 30 guards between us and the ships." Through a ventilation grate, they could see the docking bay filled with slave transport vessels preparing for departure. Hundreds of captives were being loaded into cargo holds under heavy guard, including many humans who had been processed through the conditioning center. The sight filled Tejo with cold fury that he channeled into tactical planning. "I'm going to create a distraction," he told the others. "When the guards move to investigate, you get to the nearest transport ship and prepare it for launch." "Papa, no," Sora protested. "There are too many of them." "I've faced worse odds," he replied, checking his remaining ammunition and explosives. "Besides, someone needs to even the playing field." He dropped through the maintenance hatch into the docking bay like death itself, landing among a group of Vorthak guards who died before they could raise an alarm. The plasma rifle in his hand spoke with mechanical precision, each shot timed to maximum efficiency. Alien warriors fell like wheat before a scythe as the ghost of Proxima showed why his reputation had spread across the galaxy. But this was not a stealth mission anymore. This was war. The sound of weapons fire echoed through the massive docking bay as more guards poured in from adjacent sections. Tejo moved between the parked ships like a predator in his element, using cargo containers and loading equipment for cover while picking off targets with supernatural accuracy. The aliens had superior numbers and firepower, but they were fighting in close quarters against someone who had perfected the art of asymmetric warfare. "The human prisoners!" someone shouted in universal standard. "He's trying to free the slaves!" The cry spread through the docking bay as other captives realized what was happening. Humans who had been broken by conditioning began to remember fragments of who they used to be. The sight of one of their own fighting impossible odds sparked something that the aliens had tried to erase: hope. Sora reached the nearest transport ship and began the startup sequence while Boram helped her brother into the cargo hold. Through the viewports, they could see Tejo engaged in a running battle across the docking bay, his weapons cutting down alien guards with mechanical efficiency. But there were too many enemies, and his ammunition would not last forever. "We have to help him," Sora said, her hands moving across the ship's weapon controls. The transport was not a military vessel, but it carried defensive systems designed to discourage pirate attacks. The ship's light plasma cannons swiveled toward the massed hegemony forces, adding their fire to Taeho's assault. Alien guards scattered, as energy bolts turned their cover into molten slag, buying precious seconds for the scattered human prisoners to reach the transport ships. But Warlord Kraxtar had arrived with his personal guard unit. Massive aliens in powered armor who advanced, through the weapons fire without flinching. The hegemony commander's voice boomed across the docking bay through amplified speakers. "Surrender now, human, and I will make your death quick," Kraxtar called out. "Continue this futile resistance, and I will execute every slave on this station, while you watch." Taeho's answer was a gravitic grenade that turned 3 of the Warlord's guards into expanding plasma clouds. But more soldiers kept coming, and the tactical situation was becoming impossible. Even the Ghost of Proxima could not fight an entire army alone. Then something unexpected happened. A human prisoner who had been fully conditioned, a man who should have been incapable of independent thought, picked up a fallen guard's weapon and opened fire on his former captors. The action seemed to trigger a cascade effect as other conditioned slaves began to remember who they were. "For humanity!" someone screamed in the chaos, and suddenly the docking bay erupted in general rebellion as hundreds of enslaved humans turned on their captors. Sora watched from the transport ship's command deck as her father fought his way through the chaos toward their position. His movements were poetry written in violence, each action calculated for maximum effect while conserving ammunition and energy. This was the man who had been humanity's greatest weapon during the frontier wars, the legend who had single-handedly turned the tide of battles across a dozen star systems. But legends could still bleed, and she could see that he was wounded from multiple plasma burns. His left arm hung uselessly at his side, and his movements were becoming less precise as exhaustion took its toll. He would not be able to keep fighting much longer. "Take off!" Boram urged as more enemy reinforcements poured into the docking bay. "We can pick him up from space if he reaches an escape pod." "No," Sora replied firmly. "We don't leave family behind." She engaged the transport ship's engines and piloted it directly into the battle zone, using the vessel's bulk to shield fleeing prisoners while its weapons kept enemy forces at bay. The ship's cargo ramp lowered as Taeho fought his way toward them, his plasma rifle finally running out of ammunition. Kraxtar appeared through the smoke and chaos, his powered armor making him nearly invulnerable to small arms fire. The massive alien moved with surprising speed, closing the distance between himself and Taeho while energy bolts sparked harmlessly off his protective systems. "The famous Ghost of Proxima," the warlord sneered as he advanced. "You cost me millions of credits today, human. I will enjoy breaking you slowly." Taeho drew his combat knife, the monomolecular blade gleaming in the emergency lighting. Against an opponent in powered armor, it was a pathetically inadequate weapon. But he had not survived 2 decades of warfare by accepting conventional wisdom about what was possible. The fight was brutal and brief. Kraxtar had strength and protection, but Taeho had speed and knowledge of alien anatomy gained from years of fighting humanity's enemies. The knife found the gaps in the armor joints, sliding between plates to sever critical systems and pierce vulnerable organs. When it was over, the hegemony's chief procurement officer lay dying in a pool of his own blood while alarm klaxons wailed throughout Market Station. The slave rebellion was spreading beyond the docking bay as word of the uprising reached other sections of the facility. "Papa!" Sora's voice called from the transport ship as Taeho stumbled toward the loading ramp. His wounds were severe, but he forced himself to keep moving through sheer determination. Behind him, hundreds of freed prisoners were fighting their way to other ships while the station's security forces struggled to contain the chaos. They lifted off just as Market Station's defensive systems came online, energy beams and missile salvos filling the space around the escaping vessels. Most of the transport ships had been designed for cargo rather than combat, but they were crewed by desperate people fighting for their freedom. Some were destroyed in the initial barrage, but others broke through the defensive perimeter and scattered into the nebula's concealing gases. "This is Captain Lee Taeho to all ships," he transmitted on the emergency frequency as Boram treated his wounds. "Set course for human space. Transmit everything you learned about this facility to military frequencies. Make sure the galaxy knows what happened here." Through the viewports, they could see Market Station burning as internal explosions tore through its superstructure. The slave rebellion had triggered a cascade failure in the facility's systems, turning the Nightmare Fortress into a tomb for its alien overseers. Thousands of captives had died in the fighting, but thousands more had escaped to carry word of their suffering to the outside galaxy. So-Ra piloted their ship through the nebula's treacherous currents, while Jae-min sat quietly in the corner, his conditioned mind slowly beginning to process the memories that had been suppressed. Bo-Ram held her brother's hand and whispered stories from their childhood, hoping that familiar voices might help him remember who he used to be. The conditioning can be reversed, Taeho assured her as medical nanites worked to repair his injuries. It will take time and patience, but human minds are more resilient than the aliens believe. 3 days later, they reached human space and the safety of a military patrol. Admiral Park Hyun-woo himself came aboard to debrief them, his weathered face showing a mixture of pride and concern as he listened to their report. Market Station's destruction sent shockwaves through every slave market in the galaxy, Park told them. Half a dozen alien governments are demanding we turn you over for prosecution, while the other half are quietly releasing human prisoners to avoid retaliation.